You know that exact moment in a retail setting, or, well, really any business conversation, where you've spent maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or even an entire hour with a potential customer.
Oh, yeah. We've all been there.
Right. And you've answered every single question they have. You've walked them through the features, the benefits, the pricing, the warranty options.
You've basically climbed the entire mountain of the sales pitch together.
Exactly.
Okay.
You're standing at the summit. You're ready to ring them up. You pause, you smile, and then they look at you and say those 5 dreaded words.
Oh, I know what's coming.
Let me think about it.
Oof. It is the ultimate polite rejection. Or at least, that's how it feels right in the pit of your stomach.
Yeah.
The air just completely leaves the balloon.
It really does. You just watch them walk out the front door, and in your head, you're already writing off the sale. You're thinking, well, there goes an hour of my life I am literally never getting back. And honestly, for a lot of businesses, that is the literal reality. The customer walks out, the conversation just, evaporates into thin air.
Oof. Gone.
Right. And that potential revenue is permanently gone because there was no net to catch the hesitation.
And see, that binary thinking, that whole sold or not sold mindset is exactly why businesses bleed revenue every single day.
For sure.
Traditionally, there's been this very rigid view of a transaction. The customer either buys the item right then and there, you generate a receipt, or they don't buy the item and you're left with absolutely nothing. There's no middle ground.
Right.
But the inherent problem with that binary system is that human behavior is almost never binary.
No, it's messy. People are messy.
Exactly. People are naturally indecisive. They need to consult a spouse, they need to check their monthly budget, they need to go measure their living room, or they simply need a few days to mentally marinate on a major purchase.
And if your business only operates in that binary state, you're essentially letting all of that middle ground revenue, all of those maybes just slip right through your fingers.
Precisely.
But that is exactly what we're going to fix today. For this deep dive, we are looking into the architecture of the maybe. We're going to look at how to capture that hesitation, put a structural net under it, and actually track it all the way to the finish line.
Which is such a critical operational mission. Because a maybe does not have to be a lost sale.
No, it doesn't.
If you have the proper systems in place, a maybe is really just a sale that's operating on a slight time delay.
I love that. A sale on a time delay.
Yeah. So today we're looking specifically at how this dynamic is handled using the documentation, the video walkthroughs, and the established best practices from the Register POS system.
Okay.
We're going to examine the entire life cycle of what they call an estimate or a quote, and how it bridges that gap between hesitation and revenue.
And we really want to go far beyond just skimming the surface of the software here. We want to explore how to transform what is traditionally a very messy, informal process.
Like scribbling a price on the back of a business card.
Yes,
Yeah.
the classic retail move. We want to transform that into a streamlined revenue-generating machine.
Right.
So we're going to follow the complete journey of a single estimate from its inception at the counter through the gauntlet of inventory management into the timeline of follow-ups and finally to the conversion at the register.
It's a really fascinating systemic journey because it requires balancing consumer psychology, rigorous inventory management, and, well, pure sales strategy all at once.
It's a lot of moving parts.
It is. It fundamentally changes how a business views an incomplete transaction.
So we have to start at the very beginning, right at the counter. Before we can track a quote, we have to actually capture the customer's interest at the register without, breaking the rest of the store.
Right, which is harder than it sounds.
Because there's a massive operational risk here. If we start digitally logging all these items that people might buy, we run the risk of completely throwing the store's physical inventory numbers into chaos.
Oh, absolutely. That is the perennial tightrope walk of inventory management.
The way I'm picturing this, imagine an estimate is like putting a reserved sign on a table at a really busy restaurant.
Okay, I like that.
The table is technically spoken for, in theory. Someone is planning to sit there later tonight. But it hasn't actually been consumed yet. Nobody has eaten a meal, nobody has paid a bill, and physically, the chairs are still empty.
Right.
So if an estimate is essentially a placeholder for a sales order or a layaway, how exactly does the system juggle the physical reality of what is sitting on the store shelves? Like if I quote someone a high-end monitor, does the POS system suddenly think that monitor has left the building?
This is where we have to look really closely at the foundational logic of the Register POS system as it's outlined in the source documentation.
Okay, what does it say?
The text explicitly states that an estimate serves as a flexible document outlining products or services prior to generating a final invoice. But here's a critical distinction, and it maps to your restaurant analogy perfectly.
Let's hear it.
The documentation emphasizes that creating an estimate, quote, protects your stock levels.
Yeah.
Because the system deliberately does not deplete the inventory until the items are officially sold.
Ah, so it allocates the visibility, but it doesn't deplete the stock.
Correct. Understanding the difference between allocating and depleting stock is really the cornerstone of effective retail operations.
Because if it did deplete it...
Oh, it would be a disaster. If an uncommitted quote instantly depleted your physical stock numbers, you'd be engineering a nightmare scenario for your business.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Imagine you own an electronics store, right? And you have exactly one high-end gaming monitor left in the back room.
Just one.
Just one. A customer comes in, looks at the display model, and asks for a formal quote so they can think about it overnight. You create the estimate in the system. If your software instantly depleted the inventory at that exact moment, it would falsely report to your online e-commerce store or to the other cashiers working the floor that you are completely out of stock.
Oh, wow. I see the danger there. If another customer walks in 5 minutes later, cash in hand, ready to buy that exact monitor today, your system would tell the other cashier, nope, we don't have it, even though the box is physically sitting right there on the shelf.
Exactly. You would be actively blocking a guaranteed real-time sale in favor of a hypothetical maybe.
You'd basically be cannibalizing your own confirmed revenue.
Yes. And that is why the documentation is so meticulous about this specific mechanism. The estimate provides a vital placeholder. It flags to your staff that this item is part of an active, ongoing conversation, but it does not pull the trigger on depletion.
That's a great way to phrase it. It doesn't pull the trigger.
Right. It protects your stock levels by ensuring that the physical reality of the shelf remains perfectly aligned with the digital reality of the software, right up until the very millisecond that money actually changes hands.
That distinction gives a business owner the power to negotiate and track leads without handcuffing their day-to-day physical operations.
Exactly.
But that brings up a massive practical hurdle for me. How does this actually look in the real world?
What do you mean?
Well, if I'm a cashier and I have a line of 3 impatient people waiting behind this indecisive customer, I don't have the luxury of time. I can't, navigate through 10 different submenus, open a new module, and type out a formal proposal.
Oh, the designers of the system clearly understood the psychological pressure of the checkout line.
Thank goodness.
The source materials describe the creation process as totally frictionless. It happens directly from the active checkout screen.
Really?
Yeah. This isn't just a nice user interface choice either. It's a critical workflow detail that determines whether the system actually gets used. You don't have to abandon the transaction you've already started building to go hunting for a separate quoting tool.
Okay, let's ground this in the real-world example from the video source we reviewed. We have a customer, I think they call him Doug in the demonstration.
Yeah, Doug.
Right, Doug. So Doug is standing at the counter. He's been looking at this computer monitor for 20 minutes. He wants to know the final out-the-door price with taxes and fees, but he is just not ready to hand over his credit card. He gives the cashier the old, let me think about it.
Classic Doug.
Classic Doug. If I'm the cashier, what is my actual workflow to capture Doug without holding up the line?
So the cashier simply starts ringing Doug up as if he were a guaranteed sale.
Yeah.
You scan or add the monitor to the main checkout screen. The task calculates, the total appears.
Okay, pretty standard so far.
But then, instead of asking for the payment method, the cashier navigates to the lower portion of the screen and selects the Actions menu. From there, there's a singular specific option. Make this transaction an estimate.
Wait, just a single click changes the entire fundamental nature of the transaction.
One action instantly shifts the context from a finalized sale to an active quote. The video walkthrough highlights this happening in real time.
That is so fast.
It is. Once you select that option, the system places you in a review state. You haven't locked anything in stone yet. You can still manipulate the document. You can remove the item, or you can add another item if Doug suddenly asks, well, what is the total if I add an HDMI cable to the package?
So it's still flexible.
Very flexible.
Yeah.
Then you assign Doug as the customer, ensuring the quote is permanently attached to his specific profile, and then you just finalize the estimate.
I mean, the lack of friction there is paramount. Because, friction is the #1 reason retail workers abandon data capture.
Oh, 100%.
If converting a cart into a quote takes 3 minutes of data entry, the cashier is just going to write the total price on a sticky note to get Doug out of the way so they can clear the line.
Yep, the sticky note of doom.
Right. But by making it an integrated step within the normal checkout flow, the software essentially guarantees that the data actually gets captured.
It's designed to catch the data at the precise point of hesitation without disrupting the rhythm of the store floor. And once finalized, the quote is saved to the database. You can print a physical copy or email a digital copy for Doug to take home.
Well, emailing it is nice.
Yeah, and the cashier is immediately presented with a fresh checkout screen for the next customer in line. Doug walks out the door with a professional branded document rather than a torn piece of paper. And more importantly, the business has successfully captured Doug's purchasing intent in their permanent database.
So we've put a net under Doug. He is safely in the system, but now we have a completely new problem.
Which is?
A saved quote without a deadline isn't a pending sale. It's just digital clutter. If we just leave Doug in the database and forget about him, that estimate is going to sit there until the end of time. How do we keep the momentum going?
Well, a quote without a timeline is just a wish, right? We have to move from the creation phase into the timeline management phase.
I want to use an analogy here to conceptualize how a system should manage time, because I feel like not all deadlines are created equal.
Okay, let's hear it.
Think about a carton of milk at the grocery store. It typically has two distinct dates printed on the plastic. There's the best by date, which is an indicator of optimal quality, and then there's the use by date, which is the hard expiration, where the milk is fundamentally bad and needs to be thrown out.
I see where you're going with this.
Right. So when Doug's quote is sitting in the system, how are we managing its lifespan? Does the software just offer a single generic deadline, or is there a more nuanced strategy like the milk carton?
The milk carton analogy actually maps perfectly to the dual date strategy outlined in the register POS documentation.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The system doesn't rely on a single ambiguous deadline. It equips the user with two very distinct time management tools, the due date and the expiration date. And they serve completely different operational and psychological purposes.
Okay, break those down for me. Let's start with the best by date.
The best by date in your analogy translates to what the software calls the due date. The documentation defines this as the date by which the business expects the customer to accept the estimate.
Okay.
However, practically speaking, this is an internal tool designed purely for managing customer follow-up timings.
So the due date isn't necessarily a hard boundary for Doug. It's more of a structural cadence for the sales staff.
It functions as both, actually. In the video demonstration, when the cashier finalizes Doug's quote for the monitor, they explicitly communicate it to him. They say, all right, Doug, you have 2 weeks to decide on that.
Gotcha. So setting the expectation.
Exactly. By verbalizing it, they're setting a psychological expectation for the customer. But systemically, internally, that due date is an operational trigger. It signals to the staff, if Doug hasn't proactively contacted us by this specific date, someone on this team needs to pick up the phone and call him. It's a proactive mechanism that ensures the follow-up doesn't just slip through the cracks of a really busy week.
It's like a digital tickler file. It tells the sales team exactly when to poke the bear.
Exactly.
But what about the use by date? The point of no return?
That is the expiration date. The manual defines this as the date by which a customer must accept the estimate before the offer is formally no longer valid.
The hard boundary.
Right. This is the hard boundary. And it exists primarily to protect the business against market volatility and price fluctuations.
Which is a massive concern in retail environments with tight margins or fluctuating commodities. Like if you're selling electronics or building materials like lumber, the wholesale cost changes weekly.
Precisely. If you quote Doug a specific price on a monitor today, you cannot guarantee that your overseas supplier isn't going to raise the wholesale price on you in 3 months due to a supply chain shock.
Yeah, that would be bad.
The expiration date sets a firm, legally defensible limit on your financial liability for that specific price quote. You cannot have a customer walking in 6 months after the fact, waving an old piece of paper, demanding the summer sale price in the middle of the winter holiday rush.
That makes total sense from a liability standpoint. But,
Yeah.
I was genuinely surprised by how the system handles the aftermath of that.
What do you mean?
Well, I read through the workflow instructions, and it noted that if an estimate passes this expiration date, the system doesn't automatically self-destruct the offer or scrub it from the active list.
No, it doesn't.
It explicitly instructs the user to manually update the status to closed.
Why?
Why? I mean, in an era where every software tool promises 100% automation to save time, forcing an employee to manually click closed on a dead lead feels incredibly counterintuitive. What is the strategic advantage of that friction?
It definitely seems like an unnecessary burden on the surface, yes. Everyone loves the idea of automation sweeping away their digital debris at midnight.
Right. Just clean it up for me.
But think about the psychology of sales management and the reality of improving a business. If the system automatically closed or deleted expired quotes silently in the background, those lost leads would just vanish into the void unnoticed.
Oh, out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. The business owner or the sales manager would never truly grasp how many potential sales they are bleeding out on a weekly basis.
I see the angle now. By forcing a manual action, you're forcing visibility.
You're forcing a postmortem.
A postmortem, yeah.
But by requiring the user to actively open the expired estimate and manually change the drop-down status to closed, the software mandates a moment of review. The salesperson has to look at Doug's name, look at the monitor, and ask themselves the hard questions.
Like what?
Like, why didn't we close this deal? Did anyone actually call him on the due date, or did we drop the ball? Was our initial price too high compared to the store down the street? Did he buy it from a competitor online?
It forces the staff to actively acknowledge the dead leads.
Exactly. That localized manual friction is a really powerful diagnostic tool for the business to understand its own failure rate.
That is a remarkably subtle but powerful piece of system design. Automation is fantastic for routing data, but sometimes you need to feel the pain of the lost sale so you could actually learn from it.
That's a great way to put it. Feel the pain.
You don't want your failures swept under the rug automatically by a server script. You want to look them in the eye, understand why they happen, and purposefully close them out.
It creates a closed-loop feedback system for the sales team. In many ways, a manager can learn just as much from analyzing a month's worth of closed statuses as they can from looking at the successful sales. It reveals the leaks in the pipeline.
Which perfectly transitions us into the problem of scale.
Scale is always the hurdle.
Right. We've been talking about Doug as an isolated incident, as if he's the only indecisive customer in the entire store. But what happens when a business has 50 Dougs all pondering their quotes? Or 500?
That's when things get messy.
We need to zoom out and look at how a business manages a high volume of these pending estimates. Because my immediate anxiety, if I'm the store manager, is catastrophic information overload.
A very valid anxiety. Scaling a manual process is where most businesses fracture.
If I'm managing 50 active quotes, I'm imagining this giant, messy spreadsheet of doom, a bottomless, scrolling pit of names, arbitrary dates, and monitor models, where follow-ups are constantly slipping through the cracks because there is simply too much noise to process.
Yep.
How does the system actually let a manager cut through that noise? Like, if I walk in on a Tuesday morning, log into the POS, how do I find out exactly who is ready to buy and who desperately needs a phone call today?
This is where we enter what we can call the command center. In the register POS system architecture, this is the estimate list screen.
The estimate list.
And you're entirely correct. Without a robust filtering and organization system, 100 saved quotes isn't an asset, it's a liability. The source documentation focuses heavily on the navigation and the highly granular search mechanics of this specific centralized screen.
So how do I interrogate this database? What does the command center actually allow me to do?
It's designed for rapid retrieval. The system offers multiple dynamic search parameters. If a customer calls the store and says, "Hi, I'm calling about a quote. I have my estimate number here, it's 1045, the staff can punch in that exact estimate number and pull up the specific document instantaneously.
But let's be realistic here. Customers lose the physical paper before they even get to their car. They're never going to have the estimate number handy.
True. The system anticipates human error. You can pull up a customer by simply starting to type their first or last name, and the list dynamically narrows the selection in real time.
Oh, nice.
Even better, you can search by their phone number or their email address. It's designed to find the needle in the haystack, regardless of which fragmented piece of information the customer actually remembers to give you over the phone.
I noticed a really interesting user interface detail in the source material regarding that search function. It mentions the appearance of a specific red button when a customer is selected.
Yes, the Clear Customer button. The documentation specifically highlights that when a customer query is active, a red Clear Customer button appears prominently to easily cancel the search parameters.
It might seem like a, trivial UI quirk to highlight, but anyone who has suffered through clunky, legacy, point-of-sale software knows exactly why that button is a lifesaver.
Oh, completely.
Have you ever performed a search in a bad system, found the record, but then you want to go back to the main master list and you cannot figure out how to undo your search.
All the time. You end up hitting the back button on the web browser or refreshing the entire page, and you lose your place completely. It's maddening.
Exactly. That bright red button is a masterclass in workflow efficiency. It basically says, okay, you finish assisting Doug, let's instantly reset the board for the next task without breaking your stride.
It strips away the micro frictions that slow down rapid-fire customer service. But the search bar is primarily for reacting to specific customer inquiries. To answer your earlier question about how a proactive manager figures out who needs a phone call on a Tuesday morning, we have to look beyond the search bar and examine the status filters.
Right, the statuses. This is how we slice and dice the operational data. What are the categories we're working with here?
Using a drop-down menu, users can filter the entire master list by specific, distinct statuses. You can isolate one category, or you can select multiple statuses simultaneously to customize your managerial view.
What are the core ones?
The core statuses tracking the lifecycle are pending, accepted, converted, closed, and rejected.
Let's map these out conceptually because I feel like this is the lifeblood of the entire tracking system. Pending, that is the initial state, correct? That is where Doug lives right after we hand him the printed quote. He is actively waiting for approval from his spouse, or he's just thinking about it.
Correct. If you want to know who needs a follow-up call today, you filter the master list by pending, sort by the due dates we discussed earlier, and you instantly have your daily call sheet.
And looking at the other end of the spectrum, rejected obviously means the customer explicitly said, no, the deal is dead, we lost to a competitor. And closed is that manual workflow we dissected earlier, where the clock simply ran out and the offer organically expired.
Which leaves us with the two most critical statuses for a thriving business, accepted and converted. And to truly understand the operational difference between those two states, we need to narrate the next phase of Doug's journey, as depicted in the video source.
Okay, let's get back to Doug. He's had his monitor, quote, sitting on his kitchen counter for a few days. He's talked it over, he's measured his desk space, and he has finally decided he wants to pull the trigger. What happens next?
In the video demonstration, Doug doesn't just spontaneously walk into the store, he initiates contact first. He calls the store from his cell phone and says, you know what? I have decided to move forward with that monitor quote.
So the deal is verbally confirmed, but Doug is not physically standing at the counter to hand over his credit card yet. This is another one of those precarious middle ground states that businesses struggle to track.
And the register POS system captures this nuance flawlessly. The cashier answering the phone in the video demonstration, her name is Lisa, navigates to the estimate list, quickly finds Doug's estimate using the search tools, opens the document to edit it, and manually changes the status dropdown from pending to accepted.
Okay, pending to accepted.
Right. The documentation defines accepted as the customer has agreed to the estimate, and it can now be converted to an invoice. It signifies a firm commitment, but critically, it is not yet a completed financial transaction.
But Lisa does something highly specific in the video right after she changes the status, and it really caught my eye. She doesn't just flip the status in a vacuum and hang up the phone. She actively types a note into the system.
Yes, the video explicitly shows her typing the phrase Lisa via phone into the details field, and she also establishes a 2-day pickup window for Doug to come get the merchandise.
Why is that little note, Lisa via phone, so vital? It seems like a throwaway detail for a demo video, but in a chaotic retail environment, I feel like that tiny breadcrumb is massive for operations.
Oh, it's massive for both internal accountability and external brand continuity. By typing Lisa via phone, she is creating a permanent, verifiable record of who authorized the status change and how that authorization was communicated.
Ah, I see.
Imagine the alternative. Doug shows up 2 days later to pick up his monitor, and Lisa isn't working that shift. A different cashier is at the counter. The new cashier looks at the system, sees the estimate is marked accepted, and because of that note, they can instantly understand the context. They can say, Doug, I see you spoke with Lisa on Tuesday to confirm this.
It is so smooth.
It provides a seamless continuity of service. It makes the business look incredibly competent, organized, and unified.
It totally prevents that excruciating scenario where the customer walks in and says, I called and told someone I wanted this, and the cashier looks at a blank screen and has to say, who did you talk to? Because I don't see anything written down here.
Oh, the worst.
That interaction completely destroys consumer trust. The system architecture heavily encourages leaving a deliberate breadcrumb trail. And speaking of breadcrumb trails, that brings us to what might be the most powerful feature in the entire command center, the audit log.
The audit log is the absolute cornerstone of operational transparency.
I am fascinated by this feature primarily because anytime multiple human beings are interacting with the same shared digital document, things are going to go wrong. It is inevitable.
Human error is a given.
Right. Dates get accidentally changed, items get inadvertently deleted, prices get adjusted without authorization. In a lot of older systems, if a quote suddenly looks wrong, you just have a bunch of employees pointing fingers at each other. I didn't delete that monitor from the quote, Steve must have done it on his shift. How does the system solve the quote-unquote Steve problem?
It solves the Steve problem through absolute, unblinking surveillance of the document's historical lifecycle.
Unblinking surveillance. I love that.
It really is. The manual highlights that if a document requires any adjustments after its creation, whether that's adding or removing items, modifying the due dates, or updating the status, every single one of those modifications is permanently captured in a detailed audit log.
Let's get specific. What exact data points does it capture to build this history?
The system captures 4 critical pieces of immutable data for every single change event. It tracks the exact date and time of the event, the specific user profile who initiated the change, the broad category of the action taken, and the granular details of that specific action.
Okay, let's run a hypothetical disaster scenario to see how this works in practice. Suppose I'm an employee and I go into the system on a Thursday afternoon. I decide to change Doug's quoted price, dropping it by $50 as a favor, and I extend his due date by an extra week. Does the system silently accept that, or does it trap my actions?
It traps every single keystroke. The system secretly and permanently logs. User host speaker changed the price from X to Y and changed the due date to Z on Thursday at 2:00 p.m. There's no ambiguity, and there's no way for a user to selectively delete their own history. It is a permanent historical record fused to the DNA of that specific estimate.
Wow. How does management access this? Is it hidden deep in a settings menu?
Not at all. A manager or any authorized user can simply go to the main menu, select the estimate in question, and click Review Audit Log anytime. This complete operational transparency is vital for team accountability.
I bet.
It completely eliminates the finger-pointing culture you mentioned earlier. If an expensive HDMI cable mysteriously drops off a quote, the manager doesn't have to launch an interrogation. They can simply review the log and say, okay, Steve, I see that your user account removed the HDMI cable yesterday at 4:12 p.m. Can you explain why we did that?
Yeah.
It transforms a potentially hostile accusation into a factual, objective review of the workflow.
I think we often view audit logs strictly as a tool for management to play Big Brother. But realistically, it protects the employees just as much as it protects the business.
That's a really good point.
Imagine a difficult customer comes in, furious, claiming they were promised a massive discount by a cashier 2 weeks ago. The employee at the counter doesn't have to argue or defend themselves blindly. They can pull up the audit log and definitively say, "Sir, I am looking at the unalterable history of this document, and the price has remained exactly the same since the moment it was created on the 12th. No one has modified it." It provides an absolute, unarguable single source of truth that de-escalates conflict.
It anchors the entire quoting process in verifiable reality. You have the physical inventory protected through allocation. You have the psychological timeline managed by dual dates. You have the current operational status visible at a glance in the command center. And you have an unbreakable, transparent history of every human interaction with the file.
Okay, so we've built this beautiful, heavily monitored, perfectly timed digital reservation. But trapping, logging, filtering, and following up are only valuable if they ultimately lead to one singular outcome: revenue.
Yes. Cash in the drawer.
We need to actually put money in the cash register and finalize the transaction. Which brings us to the final phase, the finish line. Converting these carefully nurtured quotes into actual revenue and syncing the data to the back office.
This is the moment where all the systemic nurturing and meticulous tracking finally pays dividends.
I like to think of this step as executing a contract. You've had this theoretical agreement floating in escrow. It was pending. Then it was verbally accepted. We've been watching it, waiting for it. But now we have to move from theory to reality. Doug is physically walking through the front door of the store. He is standing at the counter, wallet in hand, ready to get his monitor. Right. But my immediate concern here is, once again, workflow friction. When Doug walks up to the counter, does the cashier have to look at the accepted estimate on one screen and then manually retype every single item into a brand new transaction screen to process the payment?
Absolutely not. That would completely defeat the purpose of having a fully integrated point-of-sale system.
Thank goodness.
The register POS utilizes a remarkably elegant bridging function called sell from estimate. It instantly streams the historical data into a live transaction and resolves everything we've discussed up to this point.
Walk me through the mechanics of this final sequence. Doug is standing there. What is the cashier's exact process?
So Doug walks in and announces he's ready to pick up his monitor. The cashier navigates to the menu, then to estimates. They use the search function we discussed, perhaps typing in Doug, and pull up his specific estimate. We know from our earlier narrative that this estimate is currently sitting in the accepted status because Lisa updated it over the phone 2 days prior.
Right, Lisa via phone.
Exactly. The cashier opens the document and simply clicks the prominent button labeled Sell from Estimate.
My fear with a one-click sell from estimate button is that it's going to act like a straitjacket for the cashier. Does clicking that button instantly lock the transaction and charge his card for the exact amount quoted? What if something has changed?
It doesn't lock anything, it acts as a fluid bridge. And it offers a crucial layer of flexibility right at the finish line. The documentation explicitly notes that when you click Sell from Estimate, the system pauses and gives you a choice in how you want to physically fulfill the order. You can select all the quoted items, which is the standard straightforward path, or you can enter specific available quantities to process what is known as a partial order.
A partial order. Why would you ever need to process a partial order from a finalized quote?
Well, let's step away from Doug for a moment and imagine a scenario involving a wholesale contractor. A contractor requests and accepts a massive quote for 50 heavy boxes of ceramic floor tile. They show up at the store to pay and collect, but they realize their work truck can only safely hold 25 boxes today.
Oh, I see.
They want to pay for and take half the order right now and come back for the remaining 25 boxes tomorrow morning.
That happens constantly in construction, wholesale, or any bulk goods industry.
Exactly. The software architecture gracefully accommodates this reality. The system allows the cashier to enter 25 into the quantity field available to sell right now. It processes the financial transaction for those 25 boxes, permanently depletes those 25 from inventory, but crucially, it leaves the original estimate alive and active for the remaining 25 boxes. It tracks the fractional fulfillment perfectly.
That is incredibly smart.
It is. However, in our narrative with Doug, he just wants his one single monitor. So the cashier bypasses the partial option and selects to sell all items. And the manual makes a very specific operational note here. When you sell all items, the status is changed to accepted.
Wait, I'm confused. I thought the status was already changed to accepted manually by Lisa when Doug called 2 days ago.
It was manually changed by Lisa, yes. But the system architecture includes an automated failsafe to protect the integrity of the data. Let's imagine an alternate timeline where Doug never called Lisa. He just walked into the store unannounced with his original pending quote and said, "I'll take it."
Okay, so a surprise visit.
Right. If the cashier just hits Sell from Estimate, the act of selling all the items automatically forces the underlying status of the document to flip from pending to accepted in the background before pushing it forward to converted.
That is brilliant. It catches human omission. It ensures the historical data narrative remains perfectly accurate, even if the staff skips a manual update step in the rush of the moment. So we've selected all items. We click Continue. Where does that bridge actually take us?
Clicking Continue pushes all that captured historical data directly onto the live active checkout screen. Doug's monitor, the specific agreed-upon price from 2 weeks ago, his customer profile information, the applied taxes, it all populates instantaneously, ready for payment.
The contract is ready to be executed. But here is the ultimate wildcard scenario.
Lay it on me.
What if, at that exact high-pressure moment, Doug is standing at the register looking at the total for his new monitor, and he suddenly says, "You know what? I really should get a new mechanical keyboard to go with this. Can I add that?" If the cashier is locked into an estimate-generated receipt, do they have to abandon the whole process or force Doug to pay for the monitor and then create a second, separate receipt for the keyboard?
Neither. And this is perhaps the most vital revenue-generating feature highlighted in both the manual and the video demonstration. The text explicitly states, cashiers retain the flexibility to add new additional items directly to the final receipt during this checkout phase.
Oh, that's huge.
The estimate data has simply populated the shopping cart, but the cart fundamentally remains open and receptive to new input. The cashier can simply reach over, grab a keyboard off the impulse shelf, scan the barcode, and it drops right onto the exact same receipt alongside the quoted monitor.
That is massive for capturing incremental revenue. You never, ever want to put a systemic barrier in front of an impulse buy. If a customer is standing there with their wallet open saying, I want to give you more money, the software has to be able to say, yes, please, instantly without friction.
Exactly. Never get in the way of a customer trying to give you money.
So we scan the extra keyboard, we have the original monitor, Doug hands over cash as shown in the demonstration video. We hit save and complete to finalize the transaction. What happens to the physical inventory allocation right at that precise millisecond?
This is the ultimate payoff to our very first discussion about the protective bubble. The video narrator states the resolution clearly. Once you sell the items and convert that to the sales receipt or invoice, that's when the inventory is adjusted for available quantity.
Ah, so the bubble pops.
The theoretical protection bubble finally pops. The physical item leaves the store in Doug's hands, and the digital inventory count finally, permanently drops by 1. And simultaneously, the estimate's lifecycle status permanently changes to converted.
The journey is complete. The hesitant maybe has officially been transformed into banked revenue. It is a perfectly closed loop on the store floor.
It is a thing of beauty.
But wait, there is one final piece to this operational puzzle that we absolutely cannot ignore. Because a closed loop in the retail store isn't enough if the accountant sitting in the back office is tearing their hair out trying to reconcile the data. We have to talk about the back-end sync.
Oh, the QuickBooks Online integration. This is the critical data glue that holds the financial reality of the business together.
Right, because if the register POS software does all this amazing, intricate tracking of statuses and dates and inventory, but then the bookkeeper has to manually retype every single finalized receipt into QuickBooks at the end of the month, you haven't actually saved the business any time. You've merely shifted the administrative burden from the cashier to the accountant. How does the source video demonstrate this integration actually working in practice?
The video provides a really compelling real-time demonstration of this seamless back-end sync. Immediately after Doug pays for the monitor and the transaction completes, the narrator literally switches browser windows and logs directly into the store's QuickBooks Online account.
Like right there in the video.
Right there. She navigates to the master sales transactions list and simply refreshes the page. Instantly, without any human intervention, Doug's new sales receipt is sitting right there at the top of the ledger.
It pushes the completed financial data over automatically. That is standard for modern software, I guess. But there's a highly specific detail the video highlights on that QuickBooks screen that I found absolutely fascinating. It's a message field attached to the receipt.
Yes, the system doesn't just send over a generic, sterile receipt with a total dollar amount. It sends a highly specific communication thread that links the two systems. On the QuickBooks receipt, in the memo or message field, the POS auto-generates a unique text string. The specific example shown in the video is sold from estimate 001-041-526, number 10.
Why is that specific, slightly ugly string of numbers so incredibly important to a bookkeeper or an auditor?
Because it provides absolute, undeniable financial traceability. Imagine a scenario where a forensic auditor or just an anxious business owner is reviewing the QuickBooks financials at the end of a chaotic month. They see a massive sale for a bulk tile order. They need to know the context of that specific revenue. Was this a random walk-in customer? Was this part of a larger, carefully negotiated quoted project from 3 months ago?
They need the backstory.
Exactly. By having that specific string sold from estimate number 10 injected directly into the accounting software, the bookkeeper has a direct, unalterable link back to the exact origin point of the sale.
And the video demonstrates that you can actually copy that exact text string from the QuickBooks interface, go back into the register POS system, paste it into the main command center search bar, and it instantly pulls up Doug's original historical estimate.
It's a bidirectional breadcrumb trail. It allows data to flow seamlessly in both directions. And furthermore, if you look back on the register side, the system creates a permanent visual link. On the final estimate screen itself, it links directly to the final register transaction, displaying exactly when the payment was processed and the receipt number. You can read the entire comprehensive story of the sale from either side of the software divide, from the initial hesitant quote at the counter to the final reconciled bank deposit.
It is a truly closed-loop system that respects both the sales team and the accounting team. There are no data orphans, no mysterious bank deposits without context, and no ancient quotes hanging around forever without a resolution.
It architects a cohesive, manageable narrative out of what is normally a very fractured, emotionally chaotic retail process.
We have covered an immense amount of operational ground today. We started with the universal dread of hearing, "Let me think about it." And we've meticulously explored how a modern POS system turns that hesitation into a highly managed, trackable workflow.
We saw how simply clicking "Make this transaction an estimate" effortlessly creates a flexible placeholder document. We learned how that document protects your physical stock levels by allocating visibility without prematurely depleting the inventory. We unpacked the critical timeline mechanics, using due dates as internal triggers to force your sales staff to follow up, and using expiration dates as hard financial firewalls to protect your margins.
We looked at the strategic necessity of forcing the staff to manually update expired quotes to close status, ensuring they actually have to confront and analyze their lost leads. We navigated the command center, learning how to dynamically filter by pending or accepted statuses to cut through the daily noise, and how to leverage the immutable audit log to maintain absolute operational transparency and protect both the business and the employees.
And finally, we witnessed the execution. How the sell from estimate function acts as a flexible bridge, instantly populating the checkout screen, allowing for partial fulfillment or impulse additions, and triggering the final permanent inventory depletion, all while seamlessly syncing the entire financial narrative back to QuickBooks Online with perfect traceability.
It is a phenomenal systemic architecture. If you're listening to this and realizing that your own business is bleeding revenue because you're still relying on sticky notes and mental reminders, the sources note that you can actually explore the solution for yourself. You can visit abilityregister.com to learn more. You can shoot their team an email at sales@abilityregister.com, or you can call them directly at 9-Register-8 to see this entire workflow in action.
It genuinely has the potential to fundamentally change how you view and manage a potential sale.
It really does. Which leaves me with a final thought I want to impart to you, our listener, before we wrap up. I want you to think about your own personal behavior as a consumer. Think about your own indecisiveness. How many things over the last calendar year have you almost bought?
That's a dangerous question.
It is. Maybe it was a new piece of furniture, a landscaping service for your house, or a high-end electronic device. You stood there in the store, you talked to the eager salesperson, you asked all the detailed questions, you held the product in your hands, and then you walked away, fully and genuinely intending to think about it and come back. And then what happened?
Life gets in the way.
Exactly. You just never heard from them again. Life got busy, the sticky note on the register got lost, the momentum died, and you never bought the item. Consider the sheer, staggering volume of global revenue that simply evaporates into thin air every single day across every industry, simply because businesses lack the infrastructure to track the maybes. The humble estimate isn't just a boring financial document or a piece of scratch paper. When utilized correctly, it is the fundamental architecture of a relationship waiting to happen.
And a business relationship that is properly structured and systematically nurtured is one that inevitably yields results.
Something to keep in mind the next time a customer looks you in the eye and tells you, "Let me think about it." Until next time.